This is Behind the Scenes. I'm Scott Sexsmith. A devastating collision years ago has led to a new chapter for a Barrie resident as a published author. Barrie Today reporter Sean Gibson joins us with the inspiring story of John Belanger. Sean, first, let's talk about the car accident that John was involved in. How did it happen, and tell us about the injuries that he sustained?
It happened in 2014, and someone ran a red light. And then there was a series of collisions, and with about 3 or 4 cars, and John's car was hit the worst. And he suffered a ton of injuries, a lot of it trauma to the head, and it left him uncommunicated. He couldn't communicate. He couldn't do anything for quite a while.
Let's talk about John's occupational therapist and the use of an iPad that contributed to his writing a journal.
Yeah, I guess the therapist had noticed that he was writing. Everybody had noticed he was writing on a piece of paper constantly, but they couldn't make it out. So they got him an iPad. The therapist got him an iPad, and they just realized that he was actually writing words and something of a story. And he was. Eventually, when he was able to speak, he was communicating these fantasy novels. He has about 43 books written, in the sense of all these notes taken. But it's just unbelievable that they thought it was just gibberish, but it turned up being a book.
Just amazing. Sean, can you share some insights into the themes and messages in John's book, and maybe what inspired him to write about abused children and create this fantasy world that you spoke of?
Yeah, there's the second. So the first book that's going to come out is just about a guy who has magic powers, and his daughter realizes it, and he can go through doors that no one else can see, which is very telling, because that's how he explained his injury, was that all these doors closed on his mind, and no one else understood it, and he couldn't relay it. So it was very telling in that sense. And then the second book that'll come out in a few months is about abused children. From what I understand, there's no history of abuse with him, but he just felt compelled to write this story and tell their story. He said that one of the things that happened to him when he was unable to communicate was he felt like he was going into rooms and hearing that there were children who needed stories told. So these stories have been devised in his brain to tell.
What's the response been like from publishers and readers to John's book so far?
They jumped on it. A lot of people. There were a lot of publishers who wanted to publish the books. The first 2 books he's got coming out are separate publishers, and the first one is going to be done, probably published this month. But yeah, the people have. They said, him and his wife told me that the response has been fantastic, and they've reached out, but it didn't take long for people to get back to them and say they want to do it.
How has this newfound passion impacted his life, Sean?
It helps him a bit. It helps him a lot, actually. He was, at one point, he told me that he would be sitting in a dark room for 15 to 18 hours a day with his eyes closed, just because any shred of light was excruciating. And he's able to move around a little bit. Him and his wife, I went to their home and sat with them, and he can do stuff with the grandkids and be around people for about 2 hours, and then he starts getting overwhelmed mentally. But like his wife said, it's still a full-time job, and he still forgets things. When we were talking, he was forgetting a name that he was repeating. He kept talking about this one person, but he constantly forgot their name. But very lighthearted about it. He looked at me, he goes, "There it is." He goes, I can't remember their name, but it always happens. So he's accepted it. And it's tough for him because there's no history of story writing. He was involved in construction. He's a construction guy. So it's tough for him to not be able to move around and get things done. But his wife's fantastic. She's been with him the whole way, and you can tell there's a real team effort there.
Yeah, sounds like a wonderful family and a wonderful story here, Sean. Thanks for this, and thanks for taking us behind the scenes.